Jordan to our pavilion. This is the fourth year we host this panel in cooperation with the Producers Guild of America, with whom we have a very long relationship since 2008, and especially with Kayvon, who is now the co-chair of the International Committee at the PGA. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Of course, I'd also like to thank our panelists for taking the time during this wonderful festival to be with us and to share your experiences. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us. I leave you in the confidently in the hands of Kayvon Mashayekh, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George, and I want to thank everyone for coming today. It's a true honor for me to be here for the fourth year to conduct this panel. It means a lot to me. It's part of the Producers Without Borders thing that I started with George several years ago when it came up as an idea during dinner one night. Anyway, we're going to start off very quickly because I just want to make sure that the time that we have is allotted and used for the best purposes. First off, I'm going to start off with this gentleman who I met years ago, also in Cannes. This is the benefit of coming to Cannes and networking and meeting people. This wonderful gentleman is Gregoire Gensollen. He's a French producer who actually lives in Los Angeles. Is now COO of Tucker Tully Entertainment. To my left, I have the lovely Miss Dina Emam, who I just met yesterday. She has a film in competition over here. She's a producer of a film called Yomedin. So if you get a chance, please go out there and see that. And of course, to the left, a gentleman, Mr. Salem Brahimi, American, Algerian producer and director with a movie called Let Them Come. And once again, what we're really happy about is the fact that we have two Middle Eastern producers on here. We're going to get a great angle of what it's like to co-produce films in the Middle East from these two wonderful producers in the region. Then we have Alison Small, the head of the UK Producers Guild, Production Guild. She's going to talk about what it's like if you want to go and shoot a film in the UK, why you should go to the UK Production Guild to get access to what you need. Very important person. Moving down, we have Alexia Melocchi. She is a walking co-production herself. She speaks 6 languages. 6 languages: Greek, Italian, German, a little bit of English. No, I'm kidding. And Spanish, and I know I'm missing one. And French and Italian. I mean, walking co-production right there. She's going to give us a really lively discussion about what it's like to make a movie if you're going to go in any of those territories. And then, of course, my dynamic duo on the end, who I always use. I have Mr. Jeff Most, who's a wonderful producer. He's got, actually now he's going to be working with Gareth on a project. Gareth Wiley, who I met 10 years ago in the Middle East International Film Festival.
I was 6.
Yes, exactly. A former banker and now an amazingly wonderful producer. You may know him from a couple of small films. One was called Vicky Christie Barcelona. I don't know if anybody saw that, or Match Point, But anyway, he's very, very good at talking about the financing aspect of structuring deals. And then very, very important person at the very end for me, Miss Nicole Hansen, who's the head of eBrandalize. So if you're an independent filmmaker and you want to get your movie out there, you need to start learning how to market your movie and by using social media early. And she's a very important component of how you can go about doing that when you don't have the requisite marketing dollars that the studios have to compete in that world. And as you know, film is a language, and we all try to speak that language through the moving picture. And that moving picture requires you to communicate it in a way that everyone, no matter where in the world you are, is able to absorb the material. So, what do we start off with when we start off with a production? We start off with what's called the IP, the intellectual property. We're going to start off by telling you that the IP, the most important thing, because you have to have it in a fixed, tangible form, which means it has to come into a screenplay or a story. I'm going to let Gregoire kick it off by telling us the importance of when you get that IP locked down, how do you start the process from there to get the financing going? Gregoire?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, even before that, is like finding good IP will make your life easier all along the process, because if you have a strong material, then the rest is just like hard work, but it's going to happen. Yeah, I would just say once you have that, you have to start budgeting, finding a talent director. I mean, obviously, depending on the director, you may have like a small auteur movie, or you may have a very commercial movie. So that's going to make a huge difference. And then you cast and you assemble a strong team around the director. If he's a first-time director, you're going to need like strong crew. I mean, that's your question, right? It's like kind of that process. So it's really the creative packaging before we talk about the financing. Yeah.
All right. But now the important aspect of just getting the IP going is when you're trying to start the process of raising the financing for it. Can you tell me about what's required in a package when you're trying to go through a package? Because sales agents sometimes require you to have a package in order to be able to sell a film. So,
right. So it's true. From my background was for a long time like foreign sales, Lionsgate and Film Nation. So I usually what you come as a producer to get those packages submitted to this foreign sales agent is a strong screenplay, but then a director usually attached. We can't really start to do any sales without the director. And if possible, like the main lead actor or actress, and the notion of the budget. Usually also what is expected of the producer is to say like, this is the budget I have. You may not have like the entire money lined up, but at least that's what gets started a conversation with a foreign sales agent.
All right, now there's two types of co-productions that are important to understand. One is the treaty co-production, going through the route of the treaty co-production, and one's through the financing incentives. That can you, Jeff, and can you, Gareth, chime in on why it's important, the difference between a treaty co-production and a financing incentivized co-production?
Well, a treaty co-production affords you certain opportunities that you can take advantage of with a non-treaty co-production, including all types of tax incentives. There's additional upside to a treaty co-production in that you can get certain grants, your image, audiovisual support. You basically have to fit into certain boxes, though, for a treaty co-production, and your quotas of the individual countries' participants in talent and in department heads, etc., must fit into a very strict form that allows you to take care of making certain that the co-production needs are met. A non-treaty co-production basically allows you to take advantage of great tax incentives or rebates or other kind of financial incentives that are available around the world, and often do not require any co-production treaty co-production status. And again, you can get some additional monies with treaty co-production. One of the nice things, because many producers are now not only doing features, they're doing television. Treaty co-production is very, very helpful when it comes to television. Because there are quotas in place in much of Europe, and so Americans' Hollywood material often gets remade in local language rather than be unfortunately not purchased at all, due to the fact that maybe only the top 10 Hollywood series may get onto the air. And not only is it a benefit from getting around quotas, but broadcasters in Europe are actually given supports to purchase EU certified material. And another benefit there with the treaty co-production is that Netflix is required by the European Union to spend...
You're not supposed to say the word Netflix here.
Oh, sorry.
Just kidding.
Natalie. But for a real benefit to the European community, if you're doing an EU co-production, or at least one of your partners is an EU treaty co-producer, in order to provide its service in the EU, in the European Union, Netflix had to agree to spend 20% of its aggregate yearly budget on European Union certified material. So it actually raises the value of your streaming rights, and may put you in a better position to sell your material to Netflix if you're EU certified. So I mean, these are some of the benefits of having a treaty co-production versus a regular co-production, and I'm sure there are many other things that Gareth can add to that. So I'm going to pass the mic
Thank you very
over.
much, Gareth.
I'm going to talk about one of the warning things when you're doing a treaty co-production. You have to be careful sometimes that your component parts do actually fit within the treaty. For example, I'm working on a picture at the moment which is going to be directed by an Australian director and shot in South Africa, which is great because there is an Australian-South African co-production agreement. But the writer of the screenplay is British. And the Australian co-production treaty requires that if it's an Australian-South African co-production treaty, that the writer be Australian. And having a British writer invalidates access to that treaty, which is a disaster, unless, because there is a British-South African co-production treaty, that you turn it then into a tripartite co-production, a three-way co-production, with Britain being the pivoting entity in that three-way. So you've got to be really careful when you're doing a treaty co-production to make sure that you think you've got it set up, and then suddenly just one component, you can fall foul of that. And if you do, then it screws your entire co-production. But if you're aware of what the limitations are and you can create that pivot, then you have a situation where not only do you still facilitate the co-production, you get to enhance it still further by bringing in a third country's tax credit and talent and all the rest of it. So it's really worth looking at how all those components fit together.
Now, one of the things I want to ask, let's go to Alison now. Alison, being the head of the UK Production Guild, can you tell us how somebody who's going to come to the UK, for example, to make a film as an American producer, what are they going to get if they come to you first, as far as being able to get their co-productions off the ground?
I mean, I think it doesn't matter if it's a co-production, an official co-production or not, really. What we have... Thank you. Working in film and TV, including financial controllers and production accountants, as well as line producers and the production office. So, as well as others, locations and ADs and so on. So, quite often we'll get approached by... companies saying, do you have anyone who can do a budget for the UK? And also our members work a lot internationally and can also do comparable, budgets for other countries as well. So although we at the Production Guild are trying to get our members work on productions, normally our members work on a production when it's already financed, but quite often they are also involved in doing budgets for people and looking at, actually in real detail what is available in the UK and what's the incentive worth. If it's a co-production, the incentive can be worth something different to if it's not an official co-production. There's all sorts of information like that.
Now, there's two different things. Also, there's the cultural test. Can you talk about when you're doing a co-production with a country where there's a treaty with them? There's a cultural test sometimes that you have to satisfy in order to access their local funds. So, Alexia, would you be able to talk about that?
Well, first of all, chiming in and going back to the IP matter, which I thought was a very interesting launching pad. It's always good to look for international stories, and the IP is everything, and sometimes you can discover books which you can see if they've traveled internationally, they have a good following, they've been published in many countries, and then put it together with emerging directors, and that's when you start going into researching the culture test. There are certain countries that are not as restricted. Obviously, England has a very, very strict bullet points in there. I would say for my own countries, for example, Italy or Greece, it's very lax, as long as there is some parts where you are showing the country in a positive way and you're promoting it, you're not going to be so restricted with the use of, let's say, an Italian director if you want to film in Italy, but maybe there can be an Italian story that talks about a little bit of Italian history. So, you have to do like a little research into every sort of country and see what they need. But I think it's very important that everybody knows that this is a global collaboration business, and people think that shooting overseas is going to be super difficult, but it actually is not, because you're going to see a lot of people that they want to work with you from many countries. They want you to go and take your movie and film it there and use their talent, and the world is open right now. So yeah, I mean, I wish I could say more, but I don't want to go like country by country.
No, that's good. But which brings me, because I want to move this panel along in a way that's very fluid. So I want to go to the Middle East now, because it's very, very interesting. Because Middle Eastern countries have always struggled to get financing and getting co-productions going. Right now, Jordan has its own incentive. Saudi Arabia's got an incentive. I want to ask Salem and Dina, when it came to the financing of your film, what can you, for example, because Dina has a film at the festival right now. I want to know, what kind of co-production financing were you able to access to get your film going through the multiple sources?
None. um, so there were a lot of people from